turbulent forces or shakes move the ground. It's almost similar to how heavy machinery at a construction site causes the earth to shake. Except here, soil becomes ridiculously loose. If you're not getting what I mean, this basically means this is how quicksand takes shape. Although most cartoons exaggerate the effects of quicksand, getting out of it can be incredibly difficult, especially when we've been bouncing over it. So, yes, although it's very fascinating, the safest bet is to alert other people and stay away. This video was captured by a student who ventured out to Theft Auto V and was able to record this amazing sight. Dozens of tunas making their way out of the ocean. It's as if they had no control over it. They really didn't. A bunch of local fishermen rushed to the sea and pulled out hundreds of tuna. It's so amazing, as you're looking quite a few times. Chaos is quite exciting. Let's explore how amazing primitive fishing techniques are. Thank you very much for watching the video. Do like and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to not miss any of the upcoming amazing videos. Thank you. Once again.
Wow, that's good.
Almond breeze? You like the almond breeze I got you? That's so interesting.
What's happening, Dad?
Delicious taste and 50% more calcium. Blue Diamond Almond Breeze. Don't just milk it, almond milk it.
Some questions just don't have answers.
Less than 1 millimeter per year.
Less than 1 millimeter a year?
Yes.
Was it every year?
It rains only 3 years.
That's incredible.
Exactly.
On average, it rains 3/100ths of an inch a year. It would take a century for Atacama's rainfall to fill a coffee pot. How does this compare with other deserts?
Here we have a city.
Happy Thursday, everybody. Question of the day: was the world better when it was harder to see boobs? And of course, the answer is yes. I'm going to add another fact to that statement. Women are perverts now, and I think it's time for us to own it. We are just nasty. Let's get into that. Plus, later on, we're going to briefly discuss Epstein's list, which has been revealed. By revealed, I mean this is one big, massive cover-up. There are no revelations here. They took years to seal this case up. All that and more today coming up on Theft Auto.
The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon.
Highly anticipated 2023 zombie thriller The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon Season 1 has finally hit the screens. As a man who will never disappoint you, Daryl Dixon is truly deserving of being the undisputed king of popularity in The Walking Dead. In comparison to the recently concluded Dead City season, fans are even more excited about the premiere of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon Season 1. Without further ado, let's dive right in. Daryl's zombie adventure in France has officially begun. At 9:30 in the morning, somewhere in the vast Atlantic, Daryl and his small boat had been drifting for countless days and nights. At that moment, a wave hit the unconscious Daryl and he dove into the water. Thankfully, Daryl came to his senses. However, days of scorching sun and hunger had left this man utterly exhausted. With all his strength, he attempted to crawl onto the beach, but a small wave easily knocked him back. Fortunately, land wasn't too far away and Daryl managed to escape the ocean. Surveying the unfamiliar surroundings, he showed no signs of fear. Instead, he immediately fixed his gaze on a water bucket ahead. Without thinking too much, Daryl picked up the bucket and drank the water mixed with fine sand. Since his small boat had already been swept away by the waves, Daryl had no choice but to move forward. The seaside facilities were in ruins, and everywhere one looked, there was a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Yet, this couldn't deter Daryl from his path, as he had already been battle-hardened in this apocalyptic world. Daryl arrived at a coastal town that had lost all signs of human life. The corpses on the roadside were evidence of the town's catastrophic fate. He ventured into an abandoned ship in search of useful supplies. Before long, a nearby radio cassette player caught Daryl's attention. He quickly found some batteries and inserted them, hoping to find some clues. The cassette player began playing the voice of a man. Daryl picked up a photograph from the map. It turned out the man in the recording was the former owner of this ship. The recording detailed the man's experiences before his demise. He had come here to seek refuge, only to find that the place had fallen. Daryl finally learned that he was in the oldest city in France, Marseille. His situation was dire, and he couldn't remember how he ended up here from the United States. But the journey had to continue. Daryl needed to figure out why he was here and find his way back home. After a night of rest, Daryl decided to leave this place. Following the ship's owner's lead, he decided to head to Biarritz in the south of France, where there might be a harbor with transport to the United States. With his destination set, Daryl quickly gathered supplies. Due to the perilous journey ahead, he was prepared for the worst.
My name's Daryl Dixon. I come from a place called the Commonwealth. It's in America. I went out looking for something. All I found was trouble. If I don't make it back, I want them to know I tried. Hell, I'm still trying.
So Daryl set out on the road alone, and he traveled day and night. Fortunately, he encountered no significant dangers on the way, and he eventually arrived near a small town. Ahead lay a factory, and Daryl pushed open the door, hoping to find some food. However, the sound of the door opening attracted nearby zombies. The zombies push over the base in front of them, and the sound attracts other zombies. And so, the entire factory of zombies began closing in on Daryl. Daryl faced danger without fear as he quickly dispatched the approaching zombies. However, what he didn't anticipate was the corrosive substance that clung to the zombies. Seizing an opportunity while Daryl was distracted, one of the zombies firmly gripped his arm, and a high concentration of sulfuric acid began eating away at his skin. He felt intense pain, but without hesitation, Daryl fought to break free from the zombie's grasp. Before long, he managed to clear out the zombies within the factory. Daryl successfully escaped from the factory, but the wound on his arm had worsened significantly. Lacking medical supplies, he could only temporarily clean the wound with water. The entire process was observed by a woman not far away. Daryl noticed her, but they didn't exchange any words. Adhering to the survival rule of avoiding unnecessary complications in the post-apocalyptic world, Daryl turned and walked away. Shortly after, he arrived at a farmhouse. Daryl cautiously entered, avoiding the makeshift alarm system on the floor. A noise from the side drew his attention. A woman was drawing water from a well. Not wanting to startle her, Daryl began to retreat. However, in doing so, he accidentally triggered a nearby device. Causing a noise that caught the woman's attention, Daryl quickly raised his hands to signal his goodwill. At that moment, an elderly man stepped out of the house. Since they were communicating in French, Daryl couldn't understand their conversation. Fortunately, the woman could speak English. After a brief conversation, they began to lower their guard. Daryl expressed his desire to trade for some food, and the woman gladly agreed. He could take the fruit from the crate to satisfy his hunger. Daryl wasted no time and helped himself, taking a few apples and putting them in his bag. The woman, seeing the American in front of her, continued to express her kindness and introduced herself as Maribel. The elderly man also greeted Daryl warmly, expressing his wish to go to America together. Daryl, ever cautious, did not immediately respond. He simply stated that in the post-apocalyptic world, there was no longer a distinction between countries. Just then, a car pulled up. The armed man in the vehicle signaled for Daryl to drop his weapon and sit to the side. Sensing the impending danger, Daryl complied. The man and Maribel conversed in French, and Daryl couldn't understand a word. At that moment, the man forcefully grabbed Maribel, attempting to pull her into the car. Seeing the situation turn dire, Daryl swiftly grabbed the knife hand, taking advantage of the guard's distraction, dealt a fatal blow to him. When Michel saw his men killed, he grabbed his gun and fired. Daryl fell to the ground in an instant. In this critical moment, Maribel struck him down with a heavy blow from behind. Maribel then took her weapon and stuck it in Michel's chest. Crisis solved. Daryl was badly hurt and wanted Maribel to hand him a medical kit. To his surprise, behind him they suddenly removed their disguises. Guillaume removed his eye patch and approached Daryl, striking him on the head with a club, rendering him unconscious. They then began searching through his backpack. Daryl, in a daze, vaguely noticed the woman who had been following him before had now appeared here. Subsequently, he fell into unconsciousness. While in a state of slumber, Daryl recalled the scenes of his departure, memories of Judith and Carol, and his promise to find Rick and Michonne and bring them back home. Before long, Daryl began regaining consciousness. At that moment, two nuns hurriedly entered the room and gagged him with a cloth. Then another nun, speaking a language Daryl didn't understand, took out a fire stick and burned Daryl's arm with stick after stick. The screams echoed throughout the church. The next morning, Daryl woke up from his sleep, which had been quite restful. Before long, a nun entered the room and greeted Daryl, introducing herself as Isabel. Seeing that Daryl remained silent, Isabel proceeded to examine the wound on Daryl's arm. Isabel explained to Daryl that cauterization was the best way to prevent the spread of infection, and their intention the previous night had been to help Daryl save his arm. In an effort to avoid infection, Isabel had even prepared hot water. Following this, Isabel took Daryl on a tour
I want
of the
snow.
monastery. Inside, most of the inhabitants were nuns and orphans who lived harmoniously, farming and scavenging to sustain themselves. They got along well with each other. Medieval churches generally had armories, and the nuns learned how to use weapons just in case. In the post-apocalyptic world, they had to learn how to protect themselves. The farming techniques in the church were quite advanced, and they were self-sufficient in terms of food. The nuns warmly greeted Daryl, and soon, a young boy approached him, displaying great affection for Daryl. The two of them engaged in lengthy conversations, and as Laurent observed Daryl's heavy-hearted demeanor, he continued to offer words of encouragement and support. Maribel and her grandfather are on their way when a car approaches, led by a man with a fierce look on his face. It turns out that the men Daryl killed were his men, and they're here to find out what happened to them. After some probing, he suspected that Maribel had information about their whereabouts. To force Maribel to speak, the man struck Guillaume down with a club. Maribel was frightened by the scene before her and had no choice but to lead them back to the farmhouse. Seeing the bodies of his henchmen, the man was furious. In a bid to protect herself, Maribel falsely claimed that Daryl had robbed them. The man became somewhat uneasy because one of the henchmen was his brother. Just then, a noise from the side caught everyone's attention. Michel, slowly walking towards them, had now turned into a zombie. Witnessing his own brother in such a state, the man was tormented. However, the situation had become inevitable. The man picked up a knife and personally put an end to his brother's existence. Subsequently, one of his henchmen noticed Daryl's bloodstains and an adjacent piece of paper. The man recognized the notice. Isabel, the nun from the monastery, had always been recruiting survivors through this notice. There had to be a connection. The man immediately decided to head to the monastery. Meanwhile, the people at the monastery were unaware of the impending danger. Laurent was reciting poetry. Daryl hears a noise and walks over. A zombie appears in front of them. Isabel came along and told Laurent to leave and tried to explain it to Daryl. However, Laurent remained calm and told Daryl that this was Père Jean, the leader of the monastery. Daryl, an atheist, didn't believe in the existence of a god in the post-apocalyptic world, and he thought there was something sinister about the monastery, possibly involving witchcraft. But none of that mattered at the moment. Daryl simply wanted to leave. Seeing that they couldn't detain Daryl, Isabel finally revealed the truth. She showed Daryl a piece of paper with a drawing of a man crossing the sea, a man who bore a striking resemblance to Daryl. Daryl couldn't help but think Lauren's drawing skills were rather poor. However, this painting was done 3 weeks before Daryl came here. Isabel told Daryl that they have a union called the Union of Hope. The leader of the alliance was a Buddhist monk who had passed through the monastery during a pilgrimage. When he saw Laurent, he saw something special. In answer to a prophecy, the alliance had a base in northern France, and they wanted to nurture Laurent. 6 months ago, the monk sent word, hoping they would send Laurent to the base. Unfortunately, Père Jean, who was responsible for escorting Laurent, met with an accident. Isabel asked Daryl to escort Laurent. Laurent had special abilities. He could see things that others couldn't. Daryl doesn't believe Isabel's bullshit. He's looking for a weapon to use, and he just wants to get out of here. He's seen the last of a storyline before. Isabel is still trying to persuade Daryl because she believes that the base will raise Laurent to be what the prophecy says he is, and the Messiah is Jesus Christ. Daryl doesn't believe that. He just wants to find his way home. The nun believed that everything happened for a reason, and Will Haver had a port where there were rumored to be frequent ships. The marked route on the map was Per Jean's plan to take Laurent northward. Along this route were some of the Alliance's checkpoints that could assist him. Heading north was dangerous and fraught with challenges, and Daryl's lack of French made reaching the port a daunting task. Laurent was fluent in French, and the final destination on the route was very close to the port. So, the best choice was to take Laurent north. Daryl realized he had been deceived and picked up his weapons. Intending to leave, Daryl had just left the house when he ran into Laurent, who told him,
Nous nous reverrons. It means we shall meet again.
Daryl, when he heard that, just replied silently to the nuns.
Everyone said to go to a traditional university, but I chose WGU. Their online RN to BSN is nationally accredited, so I know I'll be graduating from a top-notch nursing program that employers respect. Learn more at wgu.edu.
Working it with the Experian app, your credit is going to look so money. Big check and see your FICO score anytime. Find out if you're in the green. Lam it up with Experian Boost and raise your FICO score in averaging 13 years. Get matched with credit cards tailored to you. And look like $1 million by saving on auto insurance. The Experian app looks good on you. Download it today and give it a try for free.
That ain't my problem.
Daryl then left the convent. However, he hadn't gone far when the sound of approaching vehicles caught his attention. He quickly hid behind a nearby tree. A heavily armed group of people was approaching, and judging by their direction, they were likely heading to the monastery. Daryl felt a deep sense of concern. Before long, they arrived at the entrance of the monastery. As soon as they arrived, they made it clear that the purpose of their journey was to find the American. The elderly nun recognized the man before her, Cadron, a notorious local gang leader. Seeing that she couldn't see,
Yay, we got snow.
he allowed them to enter. Isabel, realizing the impending danger, hurriedly concealed Laurent. Then, she distributed weapons to the nuns. Preparing for an inevitable battle, the well-trained nuns quickly armed themselves, while Isabel decided to confront Cadron alone. Cadron produced the notice, and Isabel vehemently denied.
Let's see what other cheats we can do.
Cadron didn't believe her and immediately ordered his men to search the premises. Before long, they noticed the hidden chamber where Laurent was hiding. Just as he was about to force his way in, the shouts of his men came from outside, and it turned out that they had discovered the presence of Père Jean. Cadron saw the weapons of the nuns and ordered them to hand over Daryl or kill Père Jean. Yet the man and the priest were acquainted, and he was somewhat unable to make a move. The nuns pleaded desperately, but Cadron continued to pressure the man. In the end, the man killed Père Jean, witnessing Père Jean being stabbed to death. Laurent rushed out. Père Jean had taken great care of him, and even when he turned into a zombie, Laurent still cared deeply for him. Upon seeing the boy, Cadron wanted to recruit him into his group. Daryl intervened just in time, dispatching one of Codron's men with a swift strike. The battle began in earnest as both sides split up. The three of them looked at the armed nuns in front of them in disbelief. Nevertheless, a fierce battle ensued. Meanwhile, Daryl displayed his combat skills. Catching Codron's men off guard, he quickly dispatched Codron's accompanying henchmen. However, Daryl was at a disadvantage in his one-on-one fight against Cadron. Cadron was a formidable opponent, and he managed to overpower Daryl, pinning him to the ground as Cadron was about to deliver a fatal blow. Isabel intervened, delivering a powerful axe strike that injured Codron's arm. Without his weapon, Cadron ran for his life. Daryl rushed to fire, but missed Codron's vitals. Daryl rushes out the door, but his gun is empty. Cadron managed to escape, leaving Daryl frustrated. When Daryl returned to the monastery, he was shocked by the devastating scene before him. The nuns, with whom he had spent the last few days, had all perished inside. The sudden appearance of the zombies also awakened the tiger in Daryl. When he entered the house, the old nun is also seriously injured, and on her deathbed she still believes Laurent is the cure for this sick world. At night, in the convent, a few people began to work on the aftermath. Though they mourned the loss of their companions, they knew they had to press on. The main characters were now united, determined to take Laurent northward with them. Meanwhile, in the northern port of Le Havre, the soldiers were discussing the escape of a prisoner. A woman approached them, questioning the crew about the prisoner's escape. The crew nervously explained that an American had caused chaos on the ship, resulting in the loss of many experimental subjects. The doctor hurriedly assured the woman that there were still some subjects available for their experiments. Looking at the approaching zombies,
Theft Auto
and the crew
V
discussing
spawn
the prisoners who
card
had
cheat
fallen overboard,
codes.
the answer to the mystery of Daryl's arrival and appearance was hidden on this ship. The latest episode of the 2023 zombie TV series The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, is absolutely amazing. The second episode is filled with thrilling and captivating content. Romantic Paris. France is turned into hell on earth. The true man, Daryl, shows his incredible prowess in dealing with the zombie threat. New setting surprises some of these reproducing offspring. I highly recommend everyone to watch the original series. Without further ado, let's get started. The midnight hour in Paris always has a captivating allure. That caused chaos on the ship, resulting in the loss of many experimental subjects. The doctor hurriedly assured the woman that there were still some subjects available for their experiments. Looking at the approaching zombies and the crew discussing the prisoners who had fallen overboard, the answer to the mystery of Daryl's arrival in France was hidden on this ship.
Say goodbye to tasteless protein and hello to delicious with Healthy Choice Power Bowls, packed with ingredients to power your day, like nourishing veggies, all natural equivalent chicken, and 26 grams of protein. Healthy Choice, the smart choice.
The latest episode of the 2023 zombie TV series The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, is absolutely amazing. The second episode is filled with thrilling and captivating content. Romantic Paris. France is turned into hell on earth. The true man, Daryl, shows his incredible prowess in dealing with the zombie threat. New setting surprises zombies reproducing offspring. I highly recommend everyone to watch the original series. Without further ado, let's get started. The midnight hour in Paris always has a captivating allure. Isabelle, resembling a glamorous lady, prepares to embark on a nocturnal adventure. This is a place that can create the most romantic atmosphere, but it's also a city where love can easily evaporate. The dim light attracts one hungry and needy soul after another. Isabelle is intoxicated, and after venting her emotions, she chooses to leave. Alcohol and hormones are not the purpose of her visit. After obtaining 2 wristwatches, Isabelle hastily departs from the bar. She was once again under the tower enjoying the wonderful night view. Suddenly, a commotion nearby grabs her attention. A man is suddenly attacked by a stranger, and a vehicle careens out of control into the crowd. Isabelle is terrified and quickly retreats. She then heads to the subway station. The recent events have left Isabelle shaken, but she doesn't dwell on them until the subway slowly approaches, and something even more horrifying unfolds inside the train carriage. Before Isabelle could react, several zombies appeared on the platform, and the humans ran away in fear. Isabelle rushes out of the subway station to the surface, but the situation outside is even worse. Traffic is in chaos, and people are scattering in all directions. Isabelle is at a loss. She walks over to the scene of a car accident to check on the driver's
Theft
condition.
Auto
However,
PlayStation,
in the next
all
moment,
vehicle
the driver's
cheat
contorted
codes.
body stands up and slowly approaches Isabelle. Isabelle, seeking help, is shocked to find the same situation behind her. Isabelle finally understands why people in the streets are desperate to flee. As she watches the zombies closing in step by step, Isabelle panics. Luckily, at the critical moment, a stylish BMW comes to her rescue. Isabelle's boyfriend, Quinn, signals for her to get in. They have no choice but to drive away from the city center. Isabelle watches in terror as everything unfolds. Soon, they arrive at Isabelle's residence. She plans to return and pack her belongings, but more importantly, she intends to take her sister with her. Lily, who has just woken up from a nap, is unaware of the events outside. Isabelle persuades Lily, albeit reluctantly, to leave. They drive away from the city center. Hoping to escape the crisis, the car's radio broadcasts government notices, with the military urging residents to stay home and remain calm. Suddenly, Lily begins to feel unwell, and they decide to stop at a gas station for a short break. Watching Lily's pale complexion, Quinn suggests seeking medical help. Unexpectedly, Lily repeatedly refuses, claiming that she only needs a few minutes of rest. But in the next moment, Isabelle learns the truth. Lily is pregnant. Quinn seems to understand the situation and urgently pulls Isabelle aside. He tells her that they cannot take Lily with them in these circumstances. The place they are heading to has no children's hospital, and they must leave this area as soon as possible.
PlayStation 4 cheat code spawn
Lily
tank.
will only be a burden. Quinn then passionately confesses his love for Isabelle. promising a future together. But what Quinn doesn't know is how Isabel would ever give up on her sister. Seizing the moment when Quinn leaves, Isabel quickly drives away from the gas station with her sister. Soon after, an ambulance on the road catches Isabel's attention, and she stops to seek help. To her horror, the people inside the ambulance have already turned into zombies. They make a hasty escape, but one of the zombies grabs Lily's hand and begins to gnaw on it. Lily struggles desperately and manages to close the car door. They speed away from the scene. They drove farther and farther away until they came to a church at night. Lily's condition worsens, and Isabel is desperate. A nun opens the church door and welcomes them inside without hesitation. Later, the priest from the church also comes out. Seeing the bite marks on Lily's arm, the priest takes her into the church and provides clean clothes. Isabel, watching her weakened sister, feels heartbroken. These sisters have relied on each other since they lost their parents, and Isabel has always been the one taking care of her sister. Isabel asks about the child's father, but before she can get an answer, Lily starts screaming loudly. The child is about to be born. In the urgency of the situation, the priest and the hard Lily tries. The baby won't come out smoothly until Lily exhausts her last breath. Looking at her sister who had lost her breath, Isabel, she didn't give up. She kept calling out her sister's name from the bedside. Also unwilling to give up was the priest. After a moment, Lily's fingers suddenly moved. Isabel looked at her sister in disbelief, thinking she had come back to life. But in the next moment, Lily suddenly opens her eyes. Isabel realizes that her sister has turned into a zombie. The nun quickly brings a cloth to restrain Lily. The surgical knife is ready. After a lot of effort, they finally manage to extract the baby from Lily's womb. The nun takes the baby aside to examine it. With the baby's cries filling the room, they confirm that the child is healthy. Even the priest is amazed. It's nothing short of a miracle. The nun hands the baby to Isabel. The low growls of the zombies outside contrast sharply with the baby's cries. The priest gestures for Isabel to leave with the child. Isabel takes one last look at her sister before finally leaving the room. This is how Isabel and Lorette end up living in the convent, until Daryl's appearance. Daryl has never had faith. Cultivating faith in this dark and bloody post-apocalyptic world is nonsense to him. As a result of the events at the convent, the few nuns there were died in the fighting. The once peaceful courtyard was now filled with bloody corpses. Daryl knew that all this trouble was of his making. So, he accepted the task given to him by the nuns to escort Laurent to the Union Pope's base in northern and perilous, requiring them to devise a safe route. Daryl wanted to follow the priest's directions through Paris. Instead, Isabel chose to detour through Angers, where she knew people. Moreover, Isabel's friend possessed a radio that could directly contact the base up north. Daryl was puzzled since the route had been devised by the priest, and taking the detour through Angers would make the journey longer. Isabel remained silent. Daryl soon realized that Paris had already descended into chaos. They prepared to set out. Laurent, as usual, was talkative, always seeking someone to chat with. Daryl's responses were cleverly concise. Just then, the donkey came to a halt, refusing to move no matter what. Daryl was the first to sense something amiss. Sure enough, several zombies suddenly appeared ahead. Isabel and the others quickly went on high alert. At this moment, Daryl decided on a different approach. He untied the reins, preparing to use the donkey as bait. Daryl acted decisively, firing a shot into the sky. Startled, the donkey charged straight into the group of zombies. This tactic proved to be effective as the zombies chased the donkey. Now without transport, they had to continue on foot. However, it was getting late, and they needed to find a place to stay as soon as possible. Just then, they heard whistling from the surroundings. A crossbow bolt was fired at Daryl, prompting them to quickly locate the enemy's position. Seeing that there was only one person, Daryl chased after them. The individual was surprisingly fast and disappeared in no time, but in the next moment, this hit knocked Daryl down to the ground directly. Daryl should start paying more attention to what's behind him. Daryl and the others became captives and were taken to a school. Daryl feels a bit better. Soon, they were ushered into the school, and Daryl was forcefully made to kneel upon entry. Isabel and her group received relatively better treatment because the children understood that Daryl was the only potential threat. Moments later, the boys howled like wolves. seemingly awaiting the arrival of their leader. Before long, a girl descended the stairs and inquired about the purpose of Isabel's first visit. Isabel explained that they meant no harm and were stranded here because their donkey had run off during the journey. Isabel then mentioned that she was a nun. To ensure the authenticity of Isabel's claim, the girl asked them to recite a prayer. This was no problem for Isabel. They recited the prayer perfectly. The girl was a believer too, so she believed them. However, her gaze then turned towards Daryl, who had remained silent. Isabel improvised and lied that Daryl was Father Daryl, a preacher from America from long ago. And so, Daryl and the rest of the group managed to break free from their predicament. The girl went by the name Lou, and she proceeded to give them a tour of the school. It's hard to imagine how a group of children have survived so long in the middle of a post-apocalyptic world, and even managed to keep the school in good order. Lou explained that they relied on hunting, farming, sewing clothes, and even organized their own study sessions to stay alive. Staying together and helping each other was their key to survival. Isabel marveled at Lou's leadership. However, Lou led them to another room, where an elderly woman lay in bed. Lou introduced her as Mrs. Dubois, the one who had taught everything to the children. Unfortunately, Mrs. Dubois had fallen seriously ill, and her condition was grim, without medication. Mrs. Dubois had been battling the illness for several months. They later joined the children for dinner. The conditions here were surprisingly good, with an abundance of food supporting the quality of their meals. Since they were all religious, they began the meal with a prayer. Father Daryl was slightly embarrassed, but he had to improvise. Fortunately, Daryl did well, delivering a sincere and heartfelt speech that diffused the awkwardness. Isabel couldn't help but secretly admire Daryl's talent. However, Daryl was even more talented in this part. After dinner, Daryl seeks Lou's help as he wants a donkey for the journey. One of the boys mentioned a person named Gaines. Lou added that Gaines lived not far away in the castle and had a horse. He also had a lot of supplies collected from the village. The only problem was that he wasn't very friendly. Daryl wanted Lou to accompany him to the castle. However, Lou outright refused, as they had suffered greatly at the hands of Gaines before. Daryl argued that if Gaines had ransacked supplies, he must have raided a pharmacy as well. To save Mrs. Dubois, they needed to go to the castle in search of medicine. Daryl's proposal gained the approval of the others. Mrs. Dubois was like a mother to all of them, and they had to find a way to save her. Later, all the school's children gathered in a classroom. Daryl had no idea what was happening. Then, a remarkable sight unfolded. Two boys operated a makeshift generator, and miraculously, a movie played on the television screen. The children were delighted, and even Daryl found it unbelievable. To watch a movie so leisurely in the midst of the apocalypse was an exciting experience for everyone present. Everyone had smiles on their faces, except for Daryl, who eventually became melancholic. As night fell, there was only one vacant room left in the school. Inside the room, there was only one bed, and Isabel declined Daryl's offer to sleep on the floor. They talked for a long time, and the conversation eventually turned to the movie they had just watched. And then Daryl revealed his feelings. The movie they had watched was one Daryl had seen when he was a child. The person he watched it with was his brother, Merle. Daryl valued relationships deeply. The next day, Daryl and Lou set out for the castle to infiltrate it. They had two options, the drawbridge at the entrance or the moat. However, the moat was already swarming with zombies, so Daryl had no choice but to use the drawbridge. They quickly reached a nearby warehouse and finally found suitable tools. When Lou wasn't looking, Daryl swiftly closed the warehouse door. He knew that if anything happened to Lou, the school's children would struggle to survive. Daryl then approached the drawbridge and, with the help of the tools, successfully made his way into the castle. Inside, he indeed found the horse, but there were no other signs of people in the courtyard. Soon, Daryl located the storage room, which was stocked with supplies, including medications. However, at that moment, he heard a noise nearby. Daryl picked up his gun and ventured outside. Following the sound, he found a basement where a boy was being held captive. Daryl suspected that he was one of the school's children, and Ellison confirmed this. Daryl planned to escape with Ellison, but before they could leave, a gunshot rang out, and a bullet narrowly missed them. It was Gaines. They began to fire wildly at each other, neither side gaining the upper hand. Daryl quickly handed the gun to Ellison, who started engaging with Gaines. Daryl slipped out and snuck up to the loft while the ammo was changing. Soon, Daryl was behind Gaines, with a knife against his neck. Gaines had no choice but to drop his weapon, to Daryl's surprise. When Gaines saw him, he became unusually excited. It turned out that Gaines was also an American, and he enthusiastically showed Daryl all of his possessions. He even had over 40 boxes of toothpaste. Gaines wanted to share it with Daryl, but Daryl was not impressed, because Daryl knew that these supplies were stolen by Gaines from the relief supplies. He couldn't trust the man before him. Daryl then took Gaines to the square. Ellison, knowing that Gaines had harmed many of the school's children, suggested that Daryl throw him into the pile of zombies. However, Daryl didn't do that and decided to leave the decision to Lou. Gaines is a little panicked and goes to the school where he'll never get away with it. Gaines tried to gain sympathy by revealing that he had a wife and 4 children waiting for him back in Texas. At that moment, he believed that the United States had not been affected by the zombie crisis, and that's when Gaines' defenses collapsed. Then Daryl pulled a wagon with supplies and prepared to return. Unfortunately, the cart's wheel suddenly broke down as Daryl inspected the wheel. Gaines seized the opportunity to grab a weapon. Both of them struggled, and in a moment of inattention, they both fell into the moat surrounding the castle. Daryl was lucky enough to have a weapon to deal with the zombies. Gaines, on the other hand, was trapped by a rope and helplessly watched as the zombies devoured him. However, there were too many zombies for Daryl to handle alone. In a critical moment, Daryl picked up a firearm and quickly aimed at an explosive canister. An explosion resounded, creating a bloody path for him to escape. After a brief bout of ringing in his ears, Daryl got back on his feet. There were still many zombies in the moat, and he needed to find a way out quickly. Suddenly, a zombie approached him, but just in time, a crossbow bolt shot through the air, saving him. It was Lou and her group who had come to the rescue. They successfully left the castle. Lou had also brought back the medication for Mrs. Du Bois, and the children shared as they gathered around. Unfortunately, the sad news came that Mrs. Du Bois had passed away. Lou felt guilty as she returned late and couldn't save Mrs. Du Bois in time. Daryl stepped forward and explained that his visit to the castle had been driven by his own agenda to find a horse. He couldn't guarantee that the medication would help Mrs. Du Bois. Lou didn't blame Daryl, and after everyone had left, she sat alone by Mrs. Du Bois' side, thanking her for everything she had done and for educating the children. The next day, the children at the school held a farewell ceremony for Mrs. Du Bois. Daryl and his group had prepared the horse-drawn carriage and embarked on their journey once again. Meanwhile, in the monastery on the other side, Cadron, leaning on his cane, walked in. He was upset that all his loyal men had died, and that it was all Daryl's fault. Cadron silently vowed to make Daryl pay with blood for his actions. This is definitely the most disgusting episode in the Walking Dead series. A man has trained zombies into a symphony orchestra, complete with violins, a pianist, and a drummer. The level of gore in the visuals is absolutely nauseating. Just recently, Daryl and the others set out for the Alliance's base. However, Isabel strongly opposes the originally planned route because she witnessed the catastrophe that befell Paris. So, the carriage had to detour to Angers. Fortunately, things went relatively smoothly after leaving the school, and they safely reached their destination. There was an Alliance contact here, and he had a radio so he could keep in touch with the base. Before long, the carriage came to a halt. Daryl left his weapons with the nun to watch over the carriage and Moron, while he and Isabel quietly sneaked into the house. Before the apocalypse, this place used to be a theater. As Isabel informed Daryl, the contact person was a musician. Soon, the conductor voluntarily emerged, perhaps due to not having seen a living person for so long. The conductor was unusually excited, and his eyes lit up when he saw Daryl. Because the conductor could speak English, he was eager to show off to a living person. Daryl didn't want to chat with him. He just wanted to find the radio as quickly as possible. Subsequently, the conductor led the two of them into the basement, where, as expected, there was a device. Daryl rushed forward to fiddle with it, but no matter what he did, the radio wouldn't turn on. So Daryl had to turn to the conductor for help, to which the conductor replied bizarrely. It turned out that the conductor had dismantled the main components of the radio and used them for what he considered a more important purpose, a phonograph. As the music started playing, the conductor hurriedly led them out. Isabel and Daryl were then left in shock by what they saw. The conductor was completely insane. He had organized zombies into the symphony orchestra. He played on stage while the zombies played their instruments around him. However, the scene was so bizarre rather than disgusting, so don't watch this part of the original film. Guys, Daryl regretted that he had encountered such a madman after making a detour to get here. So, he quickly pulled Isabel away. Just as they stepped out, a zombie was about to attack the carriage. The nun hesitated for a long time and didn't dare to act. Daryl had to take the gun and shoot it down, but this gunshot attracted nearby zombies, and they had to leave quickly. Daryl decided to stick to the original plan and head straight to Paris. Soon they were outside the city, which looked like a dead city. However, Laurent seemed remarkably excited because he was born after the apocalypse and had never seen these magnificent buildings. He had no idea of Paris's former splendor, but he walked along the streets, occasionally stopping, and quickly arrived at a cemetery where many famous individuals were buried. Laurent, a veritable fountain of knowledge, narrated their names and stories, becoming the guide to the graveyard for Daryl. Daryl, too, came to a stop at this point.
Jim Morrison.
Who's that?
He's an American rock star. He's in a band called The Doors.
Jim Morrison, an American, now resting in Paris. Laurent quipped randomly.
Not to fret, Monsieur Dime. You will not die in Paris.
Just as they were preparing to continue their journey, a group of people suddenly appeared, blocking their path. Isabel hurriedly gave the code word, and it turned out that this person was the contact for the Paris base. Fallon's gaze then fixed on Laurent. Isabel nodded, and only then did Fallon smile. Fallon inquired about the whereabouts of Père Jean. Isabel replied that Père Jean had met with an accident and that Daryl had been escorting them all the way. Fallon finally relaxed and introduced himself and his team members to Daryl. Fallon then leads them to the base, which is full of survivors and supplies. They managed this place with great efficiency, even having a restaurant and a kitchen. What was more surprising was that they had a garden. From the terrace of the garden, you could see the whole of Paris. Daryl wanted to find a way back home. Fallon was quite enthusiastic and immediately introduced Daryl to an elderly man who served as the communicator here. However, their method of communication puzzled Daryl. It turned out they had been relying on the most primitive means of communication, carrier pigeons. Daryl felt disappointed, thinking that Isabel had deceived him. How could pigeons carry messages all the way to the United States? At this moment, Fallon suggested a solution. Paris had an underground black market where all kinds of goods were traded, but even in this post-apocalyptic world, information was a commodity, and they needed a form of currency to facilitate its exchange. Daryl tries to steal the currency, but Isabel stops him. She took it upon herself to handle the currency situation. At that moment, Laurent was surrounded by a group of children, each eager to present him with gifts. Clearly, they all knew the myths surrounding Laurent. Laurent raised his head and looked at the woman upstairs, then quickly ascended the stairs. Fallon explained that the woman had lost her husband a few days ago, refused to eat, and resisted all attempts at comfort. No one had been able to make her feel better. However, after Laurent and the woman exchanged a few words, miraculously, the woman began to open up and release her pent-up emotions. It was a sight for all to see, as if they all believed that there was still hope for this sick world. On the other side, Cadron had also arrived in Paris. Here, there was a military base with a significant number of armed personnel. Cadron was led into an office where he met Janet, the leader of this establishment. In hopeless times, people often tend to follow orders, and Janet had managed to exert control over most of the cities in France through force. Cadron was one of Janet's subordinates, and he had come to Paris to present himself for consideration. Moreover, Cadron had brought a gift, Daryl's self-introduction tape recorder. As it turned out, the American who had escaped on the ship was Cadron was immediately recruited. The group then proceeded to a laboratory where some kind of zombie experiment was taking place. A doctor nearby was taking notes. However, in the very
I don't know how I did that.
the zombies began to twitch uncontrollably, and then the zombies broke free. The unrestrained zombies charged at the blast and then exploded. The entire process lasted for 18 seconds. It seemed that Janet was trying to achieve a terrifying result through this experiment, and even Cadron felt uneasy witnessing it. The next morning, Isabel and Daryl arrived at an apartment. This was Isabel's home before the disaster. The interior was in disarray, but familiar items triggered memories for Isabel. Isabel forcefully lifted the iron door of the closet and retrieved an iron box from inside. It turned out that Isabel wanted to fulfill promise. The box is full of possessions, and Isabel is looking for something to trade to get information about the ship for Daryl. Daryl remained silent and started to admire the view outside the window. Isabel informed Daryl that there were many bars on the street and numerous tourists passing by. She had expected the world to become a better place, but it had turned out to be so dire. After packing up their belongings, they prepared to leave. As soon as Daryl opened the front door, they were confronted by several zombies outside. Luckily, the apartment had a back door, and they hurriedly made their way through it. After traversing a staircase, they reached a courtyard where a child zombie blocked their path. Daryl was about to approach to deal with it when Isabel immediately stopped him. As it turned out, the girl's name was Amy, and before the apocalypse, she had been Isabel's neighbor. Isabel and her sister had encountered Amy while fleeing, but they had only told her to go back and find her parents, not taking her with them. And now, Amy has become what she is now. Amy reached out her hand, but accidentally knocked over a nearby flower pot, which quickly attracted nearby zombies. In pursuit of their prey, the zombies began falling one after another from above, creating a gruesome mess of blood and flesh. The exit door was already entangled with vines, and Daryl had to speed up the clearing process. Otherwise, the consequences would be dire. However, a more serious situation arose. Among the zombies were several sulfuric acid zombies with extremely corrosive properties. In a crucial moment, Daryl grabbed an iron rod and thrust it into the body of a zombie, then swiftly pushed the zombie toward the door. The high-concentration sulfuric acid corroded the vines, and the escape route finally opened, so they left that place. Later, Isabel handed her sister's photo to Laurent. Laurent felt joyous as it was his first time seeing his mother's appearance. Soon, the group arrived at the underground black market. Falu, experienced in these matters, presented a welcome gift and weapons. The guards allowed them entry. It's an underground crypt where the remains of 6 million Black Death victims are kept. Falu informed Daryl that when the United States was just founded, Europeans had already survived many apocalyptic events. He believed that this time, they would surely survive. Soon the group arrives deep underground, where there are red lights, wine and dancing. Watching the scene in front of him, Daryl began to question if he had come to the wrong place. Fallon reassured him not to worry. Such places were more likely to the world. Looked around curiously. A seductive host entertained the crowd, and a glamorous singer performed beautiful songs, creating an atmosphere of boundless joy. People here seem to have completely forgotten about the end times crisis. Soon, Faru tells them a message confirming that someone here knows the whereabouts of the ship. However, they wanted to see Isabel and the others' sincerity before sharing the information. Isabel had to take out the candy she was carrying. The man seemed satisfied, as candies were a rarity in the post-apocalyptic world. As he was about to take them, Daryl intervened, understanding the principle of money first, then goods. However, the man explained that he knew who could help, and these goods were like a letter of introduction. After paying the money up front, he would take Isabel to meet the person. Daryl didn't answer, and then he looked around. The man on the side of the room made him wary. His instincts told him that he needed to leave this place as soon as possible. However, the man was not willing to let Daryl go, and they got into a physical altercation. Just at that moment, another man appeared, and he was none other than Isabel's pre-apocalypse boyfriend, Quinn. Seeing Quinn, the man became submissive. Quinn had set a rule in the bar: no weapons allowed. Apparently, the man had violated this rule, so Quinn taught the man a lesson and promptly ejected him from the bar. Clearly, Quinn was the leader of this underground bar. At the center of the dance floor, Laurent was drawn to the
Grand
music
Theft
of the
Auto
singer.
V
During a
Spawn
break,
Boat.
he approached her and struck up a conversation. They chatted for a while, and the singer, full of enthusiasm,
Grand Theft Auto
offered
5
Laurent
cheat
a
code
necklace as a
Spawn
memento.
Boat.
Everyone who met Laurent seemed enthusiastic, and then he walked over to Isabel. Quinn greeted Laurent, assuming he was Isabel's child. Isabel denied it and told Quinn it was Lily's baby. Quinn just smiled. The nun noticed the situation and quickly pulled Laurent away from there. In no time, they arrived in the basement, which was filled with a collection of artifacts and treasures. Now Quinn's private collection, Quinn inquired about Isabel and Lily's recent experiences. Isabel says she became a nun. Lily's dead. It turned out that Quinn was Lauren's father. Isabel was shocked, but not angry. Quinn wants to get back together with Isabel and tells her about the good things they used to do. However, Isabel expressed her current focus on helping her friend find their way home. Daryl, not wanting to obtain information through such means, grabbed Isabel and left the place. After they left, Cadron and his group arrived at the bar. It was the first time someone had come armed, and the bar fell silent instantly. Quinn stated that he is... Both sides had a common enemy, so they quickly reached an agreement on the other side. As soon as Daryl returned to the camp, he wanted to leave. His mission was complete, and he believed he needed to find his own way home. Isabel tried to persuade Daryl to stay, but she couldn't find a concrete reason. They don't see eye to eye. Daryl voiced many negative thoughts and even mentioned Quinn, unbeknownst to them that Laurent overheard every word. Just then, a large group of armed militants stormed the camp. Cadron and his group had found them. As enemies crossed paths, their eyes filled with envy and resentment. Upon seeing Daryl, Cadron quickly chased after him. Daryl's fighting prowess was extraordinary, and despite Codron's greater numbers, he was unable to gain the upper hand. They engaged in a swift, intense struggle. Daryl had regained his peak combat abilities, and Cadron was getting the short end of the stick, almost having his neck twisted by Daryl. At a crucial moment, Codron's henchmen came to his rescue. Due to the overwhelming firepower of the opposition, Daryl had no choice but to flee. In the midst of the chaos indoors, where many survivors were injured, they could only escape. In the midst of the chaos, Laurent disappeared and Isabel had to search for him. Seeing that the commotion outside had subsided a bit, Daryl, who had been hiding nearby, made a run for it. To his surprise, the building had become dangerously unstable after being subjected to the recent barrage of gunfire. This is the Eiffel Tower after the apocalypse, its structure long decayed, and its pinnacle shattered by airplane collisions. Laurent, filled with anticipation, arrived at the base of the tower because he felt it was the closest place to his mother. He approached the Eiffel Tower once again, attempting to pinpoint the exact spot where his mother had taken a photo years ago. However, the growling ahead drew his attention. Slowly, Laurent reached the edge of a barricade, only to realize that he was now in a predicament. Zombies, catching the scent of a living being, toppled obstacles and rushed towards Laurent eagerly. Daryl, having narrowly escaped Codron's pursuit, found himself falling into the sewer as a building on the rooftop collapsed. He rushed to look for an exit, but he didn't realize that several passages were chained up. When a large number of zombies followed him, Laurent's figure also appeared on the side. Daryl quickly called his name, but Laurent seemed to be deaf. The zombies around him were closing in on Laurent, but he just closed his eyes and started praying. Daryl's heart was burning with anxiety, but no matter how he shouted and tapped the chain, Laurent and the zombies seemed to be deaf. By now, the zombies had surrounded Laurent. Daryl, desperate, used a flashlight to assess the situation. Unexpectedly, the zombie horde simply passed by Laurent without attacking him. Daryl looked at the scene in disbelief. Daryl called out to Laurent again, but Laurent just smiled and turned to follow the zombies. With no other choice, Daryl had to accept this surreal reality. However, at that moment, a strong sense of suffocation overwhelmed Daryl. He opened his eyes and realized he was deep underwater. A zombie was about to drag him away. Daryl drew his knife and stabbed upward, then struggled to swing to the surface. Upon seeing the gaping hole in the rooftop, Daryl understood that Laurent's earlier scene was just his own hallucination. On the other side, Survivor Camp Leader Cadron couldn't find Daryl and sought clues from the camp residents. Although Cadron didn't receive any news about Daryl, he accidentally learned about Laurent's extraordinary status among these people. Janet walked out. She had heard rumors of this special boy and had only thought of Laurent as a joke, but the woman's reply surprised her. The woman firmly believed that Laurent could save everyone. Hearing this, Janet's expression suddenly changed because she realized that these people had developed their own faith, making them challenging to control. Janet then turned her gaze to a crying baby nearby. Reaching out to pick up the infant, terrified that Janet might harm her child, the woman pleaded desperately. Surprisingly, Janet only cradled the baby in her arms and comforted the infant. Cadron instantly understood the implications. Janet wouldn't allow any hope to exist within her order. The hope of Laurent and the Union of Hope had to be eliminated to prevent any uprising. They had to find Laurent quickly and erase him. Meanwhile, Daryl emerged from the sewer, seeking Isabel's help to find Laurent. However, having been to her place only once, he struggled to locate Isabel's residence. Luckily, Antoine happened to pass by. From him, Daryl learned that Codron's forces were currently hunting Laurent. Time was of the essence, and Antoine prepared to take Daryl to Isabel's place. However, a sudden sound of a car approaching interrupted them. Daryl urgently signaled Antoine to hide, leaving the bicycle behind. They concealed themselves around the corner, where the car came after them. Just as he got off the bike, the man realized that there was a pigeon cage in the bike, which made him so happy that he could have a good meal in the evening. The man directly loaded the cage onto the car. Antoine was also anxious about how he could let them take away these pigeons, which were his treasures. Antoine desperately pleaded with them to spare the pigeons. However, the other party paid no heed. In the post-apocalyptic world, lives were far less valuable than food. The man didn't hesitate to shoot. While the man mocked, a dagger struck him fatally, causing him to die instantly. Subsequently, Daryl, wielding a hammer, dealt with the man's accomplice. However,
Solo stole fix 5. They take out the smoke.
Books change people's lives.
Something unwritten never changed your life.
Absolutely. My dining room table was probably as well.
Monk, your books are good.
But they're not popular.
What a fucking noses in
Pretty good one. I pay for my get out of the car.
Why do you have to keep getting out of the car when you're doing nothing until then?
uninspecting
I did give you two, and I
Antoine,
earlier.
I fell asleep.
Still concerned about his pigeons, Daryl then moved the cage from the car and placed it in front of Antoine.
Things.
Oh yeah, things just had to get nasty. Oh shit! What the? Yeah, I guess that's that, motherfucker.
Resisting arrest. Armadillo will add
We are airborne and en route. Are you happy now?
Degenerate! Citizens reporting assault with a deadly weapon on Yankudo Avenue.
What the fuck? Crap! Oh god! What?
We have a visual on the target.
Suspect westbound on Yankudo Avenue.
I see the perp. We're in pursuit.
Citizens report 245 on Algonquin Boulevard. We've got a vehicle explosion on, East Joshua Road.
Copy, dispatch. Victor 13 is in the area.
How's it going?
I'm really concerned about my dog. He told me this morning that his food is causing his IBS to act up.
What the heck's this? Did you see that? Come on, then! Oh. Fucker!
Citizens report assault with a deadly weapon on, Alhambra Drive.
What exactly is
Suspect last seen on Alhambra Drive.
You bastard!
Officers report a criminal resisting arrest on, Alhambra Drive.